An 11-year-old boy opened his phone sometime after the worst day of his life, went to his Instagram profile, and changed one thing: his profile picture. He replaced it with a photo of himself wrapping his arms around his father after a race win at Echo Park Speedway in February. His dad is still in full race gear, holding the checkered flag, holding his son. That image, frozen in a February victory lane, is now the first thing the world sees when it looks at Brexton Busch's. He didn't post a caption. He didn't write a statement. He was 11 years old. That was enough. That single, quiet gesture tells you more about what this loss actually means than any headline. Because Kyle Busch wasn't just NASCAR's all-time winningest driver. He wasn't just a man with 234 wins, 2 championships, and a career that no one in the sport's history has made. He was a father who, just 3 days before he died, posted a birthday message to that same boy that ended with, "There is no limit to what you'll accomplish. Love you, buddy." Kyle Busch died on May 21st, 2026. He was 41 years old, and now, the sport he dominated for over 2 decades is trying to make sense of a loss that came with no warning, no preparation, and no time to say goodbye. Before diving into the timeline, it's worth understanding exactly who the sport lost, because the numbers alone don't capture. Kyle Thomas Busch was born on May 2nd, 1985, in Las Vegas, Nevada, into a family where racing wasn't a hobby, it was a language. His father, Tom, raced locally. His older brother, Kurt, was 7 years ahead of him and already making noise in NASCAR. Kurt once told reporters, "You think I'm a pretty good race car driver? Wait until you see my brother. He's the best driver in the family." Kurt was right. Kyle entered NASCAR's national stage as a teenager, carrying the nickname Shrub, the younger Busch. But he didn't stay in his brother's shadow for long. He developed his own identity, his own fire, and eventually his own nickname, Rowdy, a nod to a character in Days of Thunder and an accurate description of everything he brought to a race car. Over a career spanning more than 2 decades, Kyle Busch won 2 Cup Series championships in 2015 and 2019. He won 63 Cup Series races, ranking 9th on the all-time list. He won 102 races in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, an all-time record. He won 69 races in the Craftsman Truck Series, also an all-time record. Combined across NASCAR's top 3 national series, Kyle Busch finished with 234 wins. That is the most in NASCAR history, 34 more than Richard Petty's combined total. The next closest active driver, Kevin Harvick, sits at 121. He was polarizing in the way only the truly great can be. Fans booed him at tracks across the country. He leaned into it, climbed out of his car after wins, and bowed. A showman's gesture from a Las Vegas kid who knew exactly what he was. Ryan Blaney described him this way: "He was a polarizing figure that no matter if you liked him or disliked him as a racer, he was always talked about. Just this guy that was always there and won too much, which is why people didn't like him. And he always spoke his mind. I think people came to respect that about him, that he was true to who he was, and that never changed." That is who NASCAR lost on May 21st, 2026. What makes this story so painful isn't just the death, it's the timeline. Because when you lay out day by day, what looked like a stubborn cold became something that moved with terrifying speed. May 2nd was Kyle's 41st birthday. His wife Samantha posted a video of him helping their 4-year-old daughter Lennox steer a bicycle around a Walmart parking lot. There was no indication anything was wrong. He was laughing. He was a father. He was present. May 10th brought the Cup Series race at Watkins Glen International. During that race weekend, Kyle was battling what the broadcast described as a sinus cold. The intense G-forces and elevation changes on the road course were making his symptoms worse. Near the end of the race, he radioed his crew and asked for team physician Dr. Bill Heisel to meet him at his bus afterward. He said he needed a shot. At the time, that sounded like a routine driver recovery request. Something for inflammation, something to get through a rough weekend while sick. He still finished 8th. He kept racing. May 15th was the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Dover. Kyle won his 69th Truck Series win, a new record. In the post-race interview, he addressed his lingering illness directly. "I'm still not great." The cough was pretty substantial last week. And then, when asked why winning still mattered so much, he delivered the line that now follows this entire story. Because you never know when the last one is. May 17th was the All-Star race at Dover. Kyle finished 17th. It was the last race he ever started. May 18th, Kyle posted a birthday message to his son Brexton, who had just turned 11. It was his final public post. He wrote, "Happy birthday, Brexton. Your mom and I are so proud of who you're turning out to be. You're the best kid on and off the track. You amaze us every day. Keep doing what you're doing, and there is no limit to what you'll accomplish. Love you, buddy." That was not a racing headline. That was a father celebrating his son. May 20th, Kyle was at the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center in Concord, North Carolina, testing in a Chevrolet racing simulator. Around 5:30 p.m., an unidentified caller contacted emergency services. The call was later obtained and released by the Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office. The caller told the dispatcher, "I've got an individual that's a shortness of breath, very hot, thinks he's going to pass out, and he's producing a little bit of blood, coughing up some blood. He is awake. He's on the bathroom floor right now." The caller then gave directions and asked emergency responders to turn off their sirens on arrival. Kyle was transported to a hospital in Charlotte. May 21st. That morning, Richard Childress Racing announced Kyle would not compete at Charlotte Motor Speedway that weekend due to a severe illness. Most fans expected him to miss the race, recover, and return. At 5:40 p.m., NASCAR made the announcement that stopped the sport cold. The joint statement from the Busch family, Richard Childress Racing, and NASCAR read, "On behalf of the Busch family, everyone at Richard Childress Racing, and all of NASCAR, we are devastated to announce the sudden and tragic passing of Kyle Busch. He was 41 years old." The family statement on May 23rd gave the world a medical explanation, but it's worth understanding what that explanation actually means. Because severe pneumonia progressing into sepsis is a phrase that can sound routine until you understand how fast it moves. Pneumonia is an infection of the lungs' air sacs. Those air sacs fill with inflammatory cells and fluid, making it progressively harder to breathe. Symptoms can closely mirror the flu: fever, chills, cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, which is part of why it gets pushed through. Drivers race sick. Athletes push through discomfort. It's almost part of the culture. When both lungs are infected simultaneously, that's referred to as double pneumonia. And while the severity varies case by case, the body's ability to deliver oxygen becomes severely compromised. Dr. Ryan Mavies, chair of the Chest Organization's Infections Network and a professor at Wake Forest, explained the specific danger in cases like Kyle's. After certain pneumonias, classically influenza, but some other viruses can do this as well, people start with a viral pneumonia, and then you get a bacterial superinfection on top of that. The bacterial superinfections are often potentially very dangerous organisms. Staphylococcal pneumonia, some bad streptococcal pneumonias, and these can be very severe and can progress very quickly. When I think about a young man dying of pneumonia after a preceding period of illness, that is the thing that I think about. Dr. Mavies noted that when looking at people in their 40s who are sick enough to be hospitalized with pneumonia, roughly 1% of them will die. A 41-year-old dying from it is not the norm, but underlying conditions, a delayed diagnosis, and an infection that gets ahead of treatment can all turn pneumonia into something life-threatening fast. That's where sepsis enters. Sepsis is a life-threatening condition in which the body responds improperly to an infection. Rather than fighting off the infection in a controlled way, the immune system goes into overdrive, triggering widespread inflammation, microscopic blood clots, and leaking blood vessels. It begins attacking the body's own organs, the heart, brain, kidneys, and blood vessels. If sepsis progresses into septic shock, blood pressure drops severely, and organ failure follows. According to the CDC, at least 1.7 million adults in the United States develop sepsis every year. It requires immediate intervention. The window for treatment can close faster than anyone expects. Dr. Kenton Dover, a physician in pulmonary and critical care medicine at UNC Hospital at Chapel Hill, put it plainly, you get full body inflammation. In the setting of pneumonia, that would be an infection that starts in the lungs, and then the immune response to that becomes overwhelming and starts to affect other organs. Now look back at Kyle's timeline with that medical context. The sinus cold at Watkins Glen on May 10th may have been the beginning. The cough he described at Dover on May 15th, pretty substantial, may have been the illness deepening. And by May 20th, he was on a bathroom floor, coughing up blood, unable to stand. Kyle Busch was racing 6 days before he died. That is how fast this moved. Brad Keselowski confirmed he knew Kyle hadn't been feeling well in the weeks leading up to his death, but said that after the Dover win, those concerns faded from it. Chase Briscoe called the situation a wake-up call for drivers across the garage, a reminder that pushing through illness in a sport that rewards toughness can sometimes carry a price no one is prepared to pay. On Friday, May 22nd, one day after Kyle's death was confirmed, Childress Racing made an announcement that immediately became one of the most discussed decisions in recent NASCAR history. RCR would not be reassigning the number 8. They would not hand it to another driver, rebrand it, or move on. Instead, they released this statement. Kyle Busch was instrumental in the design of RCR's stylized number, and it has become synonymous with Kyle and an important symbol for his fan in the NASCAR industry. No one can carry it forward to the level that he did. The number 8 is reserved and ready for Brexton Busch when he is ready to go NASCAR racing. Beginning with the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, RCR would run the number 33 car instead, with Austin Hill taking the seat. The number 8 would sit, preserved, waiting. For a longtime NASCAR fan, this decision carried a deep historical echo. When Dale Earnhardt was killed in a crash on the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500, RCR moved away from the iconic number 3. They switched it to the number 29 for Kevin Harvick. The number 3 didn't return to the track until 2014, when Richard Childress's grandson, Austin Dillon, took the wheel. RCR understands, perhaps better than any organization in the sport, that some numbers carry more weight than the car they're painted on. The scene at Charlotte Motor Speedway on Saturday morning made that weight visible. NASCAR officials allowed RCR to be the first team to unload their cars and roll them through the inspection garage, a meaningful gesture in a garage that felt nothing like a normal race week. The crowd that gathered was quiet. Crew members, drivers, media, and fans stood in the rain as the number 33, with a small black number 8 decal on the door, descended from the hauler. Dalton Good, a graphic installer at Childress Racing, said afterward, "Putting the new numbers on this car was the hardest thing I've ever done." The number 8 was still visible everywhere else. On the hauler, on the toolboxes, on the crew members' hats, on the jacks the car stood on in the garage. It hadn't been erased. It had simply been moved somewhere no one else could touch it. Bubba Wallace arrived at the garage and embraced RCR crew members. Wallace had driven for Kyle Busch Motorsports earlier in his career, winning 5 races. He wrote on Instagram afterward, "Kyle was a monumental factor in who Bubba Wallace is today. I sit here and look at all things around me and all the things I've been able to accomplish. Kyle played a role in every aspect. That's what hurts the most." All 39 cars in the Coca-Cola 600 carried a small black number 8 decal in tribute. The birthday post Kyle published on May 18th was the last thing he ever shared publicly. 3 days later, he was gone. He wrote, "Happy birthday, Brexton. Your mom and I are so proud of who you're turning out to be. You're the best kid on and off the track. You amaze us every day. Keep doing what you're doing, and there is no limit to what you'll accomplish. Love you, buddy." There was no racing angle in that post. No mention of wins, records, or championships. It was a father looking at his son and being proud, not of the racing resume, but of the person. That distinction matters because Brexton Busch is already building a serious resume of his. Brexton, now 11, began racing in 2020 at just 5 years old, starting in the beginner box stock division at Millbridge Speedway, a 1/6-mile dirt track in Salisbury, North Carolina. He won his first race 1 month into his career. He has not slowed down since. In 2024 alone, he recorded 48 wins and 107 top 5 finishes across multiple styles of race. He won the Tulsa Shootout Junior Sprint Championship, earning his first career Golden Drill. Kyle's stated dream was to one day race against Brexton in the Truck Series when his son became eligible. That dream will not happen the way Kyle imagined it, but the path is still there. It must be said clearly, though, Brexton Busch is a child who just lost his father. The number 8 being reserved for him is one of the most meaningful tributes this sport has ever seen, but it should not become a weight he has to carry before he's ready. He deserves space to grieve, to grow, and to decide his own future on his own terms. If the day comes when he climbs into an RCR number 8 car, it will be one of the most emotional moments in NASCAR history. But that day belongs entirely to the future. Kyle is also survived by his wife Samantha, whom he married on New Year's Eve, 2010. Together, they built the Bundle of Joy Fund, a foundation supporting awareness and advancement for IVF and infertility treatment, a cause born from their own experience welcoming Brexton through IVF in 2015. Their daughter Lennox, now 4, was welcomed through a surrogate in 2022. Kyle's brother Kurt and their parents Tom and Gay are also among those left behind. In the days following Kyle's death, a theory began circulating online attempting to connect his passing to a lawsuit he and Samantha had filed against Pacific Life Insurance Company. The facts of that lawsuit are straightforward. In October 2025, Kyle and Samantha sued Pacific Life, claiming they lost more than $8.5 million after being misled into purchasing indexed universal life insurance policies marketed as tax-free retirement plans. They alleged the company used speculative projections that failed to disclose true risks and costs, and that the agent prioritized commissions over policyholder interests. The lawsuit was settled confidentially in February 2026, roughly 3 months before Kyle's death. Some voices online have suggested this financial dispute is connected to how Kyle died. There is no credible evidence supporting that claim. No official investigation, no report, and no authority of any kind has drawn a connection between that settled lawsuit. The family's own medical statement is clear. Severe pneumonia progressed into sepsis. That is the cause. That is what the medical evaluation concluded. Repeating speculation without evidence does nothing except make an already unbearable situation harder for a family that has asked, simply, for privacy and understanding. 234 wins. That number sits at the top of NASCAR's all-time combined series wins list, and it isn't close. Kyle's total is 34 wins, more than Richard Petty's combined figure. He won in 19 consecutive Cup Series seasons, from 2005 through 2023, a record that may never be equaled. He won with Hendrick Motorsports, he won with Joe Gibbs Racing, and he won with Richard Childress Racing. He won on super speedways, road courses, short tracks, and intermediate ovals. But the legacy is not only in the In his final appearance on Marty and McGee, Kyle talked about mentoring the younger generation of Cup drivers coming into the garage, drivers like Carson Hocevar, whom many were already calling a new Kyle Busch. He reflected on how Jeff Gordon once warned him about being too aggressive, and how Tony Stewart put an arm around him because he saw something of himself in the. And then Kyle said he wanted to be more of that for others. I like it more when they ask. It shows that they're asking for a reason. It shows that maybe they will ingest some of the information and the conversation a little bit more. I probably need to be more of an arm-around-the-shoulder type guy. That was Kyle Busch at 41, still the fiercest competitor in any room he entered, but also a man who had grown, evolved, and found something beyond the wins. At the Coca-Cola 600, Daniel Suarez crossed the finish line first in a rain-shortened race and dedicated the victory to Kyle and his family. "This one is for Kyle," Suarez said. Across the garage, drivers and crew members wore black number 8 decals on their cars. Chase Elliott publicly called for Kyle to be named that year's most popular driver, a vote he himself had won multiple times, a gesture that said everything about how the garage truly felt about the man they'd spent years competing against. There's also an immediate and growing push to place Kyle Busch in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. ESPN's Ryan McGee, who covered Kyle throughout his career, recalled the conversation they had at North Wilkesboro Speedway in 2023, where Kyle pushed back on the idea of dwelling in what-ifs. Kyle told him, "If I let myself start thinking about what-ifs, then you know what I'm not thinking about? What's next? And everything I've done up to now, that's what's gotten me into a position where I can keep focusing on what's next. I wouldn't be here now if I hadn't been in all those places first. So I need to make sure I appreciate what I have." 6 days before he died, standing in Dover's victory lane for the last time, he said it a different way. "Because you never know when the last one is." Kyle Busch knew better than anyone that winning is never guaranteed, that records don't protect you, and that the next race is never promised. He raced like every lap was the last one because somewhere in that competitor's heart, he understood that truth better than most. He was fierce. He was passionate. He was immensely skilled. He was a husband, a father, a son, a brother, and the greatest winner the sport has ever produced. And on May 21st, 2026, NASCAR lost him, not on a racetrack, not in the blaze of competition he was built for, but to a fast-moving illness that gave no warning and offered no second chance. Rest in peace, Rowdy. The sport will not see another one like